What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Modern Mortgage Show, where I interview mortgage professionals who share their stories and modern information about the industry. I'm your host, Rocco, and my guest for today's show is Scott Griffin, and he's the founder and CEO at Scott Griffin Financial out of Los Angeles, California. Scott, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Rocco. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today. So, Scott, why don't we start off the show? Can you just give us a little bit about yourself and maybe give us a brief introduction of who you are?
Oh, absolutely. Since this is about mortgages, I'll kind of focus my little journey into entering this world through an elevator ride. In the late 90s, I think a lot of us find our way into mortgages through somebody's invitation. I don't
Mhm.
think ever growing up I ever would have thought mortgage lending is where my joy would be unlocked, but it happened anyway. And I'm a mortgage broker, and my goodness, I what I love so much about industry are the opportunities we're empowered with. Not only with the
Mhm.
different lenders we get to meet along the journey, but the clients we serve and the opportunity to touch them in that very intimate moment of life, that time around home where kind of life gets developed. And somehow I get to show up in that moment. So for
Mhm.
me, I think that's where my joy was really discovered in mortgage lending and mortgage brokering. And
Yeah.
I've been having a great time ever since.
So, how long have you been in the industry?
Well, I showed up in the late 90s. Latest of 97, I started training. I got my wings freed in 98, 99, and I funded my first loan and I quit my job of leasing apartments. And I've not looked back ever since, in fact.
Awesome. So, about a little over 20 years.
A little bit, my God, time goes so fast, yes.
So did you do any type of work before you got into the industry?
Well, sure. For about 12 years before, I was leasing and managing large apartment communities. And I took those understandings, such great things I learned wrapped around housing, even though they were 12-month increments, it was
Mhm.
still wrapped around the spirit of home. So there was an organic path from moving over from that story into this one.
Yeah.
Um, a little bit different, of course, but still in the spirit of it. So I've been at
Absolutely.
this for quite a while in the spirit of
Awesome.
real estate, 30 plus.
So we're in a very weird time right now, and the industry is in a weird time. So what are you and your company, what are you guys doing to get past this or get through this uncertain period of time?
Do you know what I love about right now? It's so different than any other time from before
Mhm.
that it has the ability to interrupt normal. I've learned that when normal gets interrupted, you have an opportunity to touch people differently.
Mm.
We're focused on our team of reaching out and staying in great contact, not only with those partners that we partner up with in the art of selling real estate, but homeowners that already have homes.
Mhm.
What I love about this pandemic's odd timing is how it unlocked history making events in the lending environment to interest rates, numbers that I've never played with in the befores. Well, they're part of kind of today. They would be present if capacity could manage this, and some other things were present. I have a feeling that you, I, and many of us would be speaking to homeowners with interest rate discussions starting at 3%, 2 point something, living in a 30-year fixed rate environment,
Mhm.
giving consumers the opportunity to secure their neighborhood and their communities in a much more affordable method, probably inviting an extended period of time in that home and its home ownership because we're able to secure housing costs. And I've discovered that in life, when life is dark and things are troubled, opportunities there somewhere. And what I've noticed is the opportunity to secure terms that are history making in their own right.
Mhm.
And even though the banks are not capable right now to take on the abundance of folks that could benefit, what we're doing in our team is that, well, I've learned that life is better empowered through strategies. And I believe as we move forward together, we'll witness banks and lenders opening up space to invite new loans to come in. They'll reach their capacity and rates will rise again to slow its production. So I think the early bird in the show is the winner. What we're doing is creating reservations. We're underwriting and we're taking new opportunities to get into the lender's office to be almost to clear to close and not be ready to pull that interest rate locking trigger until the moment invites us. Those are for families trying to achieve ultra low history making numbers. But we're able to help families immediately right now. You know what I've discovered? That many of us move forward in life with our own current understandings. I don't remember any class growing up in school that taught me about mortgage financing instruments and how, for example, if we bought a home a few years ago and are witnessing great equity growth, well, who knew that you could take outside debt, student loans, credit cards, automobiles, take all of this outside debt and restructure it into one low ultra master payment that's fixed for 30 years. I think that opportunity comes in many flavors for many families. And I think that at the end of the day, we really are individuals with our own inner story we're moving forward. I think it's real estate and mortgage lending that can empower fantasies, empower home ownership, empower tomorrow differently. If somebody would just communicate and educate with others of how. We do so in our family. We produce videos. I produce videos that I release consistently every 2 weeks. During the now times, I found enough invitations to be even more available for sending out updated messages of how you and I as a consumer can participate in things that look so different. It's that type of invitation in its own right. So it is different. I have a feeling that for some of us it's happy, some of us it's sad, and some of us are witnessing great levels of pain. I think that all of us are witnessing something than we ever did before. And it's a great time to come together as a community through tools like what we're engaging together, getting to meet you, in fact, Rocco. How cool are you to make a platform available for many to let stories get shared? And I think at the end of the day, we're living in our own stories and sharing them with others. And Rocco, you create a great invitation to do that. I think it's terrific. So,
well, thank you. Thank you. I think it's really important to keep the, consumers educated and, up to date about what's going on during this definitely uncertain period of time.
Absolutely.
So moving forward, you've been in the industry for over 20 years now. I'm sure you've helped many, many people. What would you say is the most rewarding or satisfying or fulfilling thing about, your job?
I would say the most rewarding, fulfilling thing that I've done for industry, it happened back in 2010. It's so amazing to me, Rocco. I asked consumers and professionals alike, and I asked them, are you familiar with the SAFE Act? Are you familiar with the Dodd-Frank rules that recreated what the lending industry looks like? And what I discover, Rocco, is no. In fact, they've never heard of it at all. And a lot of what lives in the rule in the Dodd-Frank law are things that protect consumers and invite a different level of stability. In fact, it was 2010. Rocco, it was that year that they were talking about the change of how every loan originator in the nation was to get paid moving forward. It's called the Loan Officer Compensation Rule. And it was just rolling out. And I got involved. I went to my local lending association meeting so I could learn more. Rocco, at the end of the meeting, not only did I learn a lot, but I stayed after for quite a while. 2010 was, a lot of friends were lost in the industry. There was a major meltdown, if we remember. And here I was as an association meeting. And what I was loving were all of these friends I knew from before. A lot of them were there. So it was like a reunion. In fact, I stayed like an hour later, and the next thing I know, Rocco, I'm getting invited from this beautiful woman, Joanne, telling me about her brother and their business partner going off to DC in just a few weeks to speak to Congress on housing reform and how some of these new laws are going to affect consumers and unintended consequences. And Joanne goes, Scott, I've been listening to you talking with others. I think you'd be amazing going to Congress and speaking on housing reform. And again, it was another life's invitation. So Rocco, I went. And here's what I discovered. I discovered that California has an incredible voice. We were the only one in the entire nation with a lobbyist in Capitol Hill. And I arrived. And the lobbyists, we went to their offices, Rocco, and they explained to us that we would be meeting with our congressmen members, with Senate, and we would be sitting there for about 10 minutes behind closed doors. And we may even have their aides in there. Speak quickly, to the point, and don't be offended if you're rushed out. It was kind of the overview of what to expect. But Rocco, that's not what happened. And instead, the doors closed. And if we think about it, politicians are expert at being political. They're politicians. They're not mortgage lenders. And they were available to listen. And they did. We were behind closed doors for about 45 minutes in these meetings. And 3 weeks later comes out new laws that supported what I was speaking on, what we were speaking on. In fact, 3 of my speaking points that we spoke on are actually written in law today that we use in lending. I learned that a voice, a single voice, has incredible power when it's focused to serve and support. And I went back several years in a row, and I ended up becoming the state president for California's Lending Association. I found that it was important to participate other than just talking to clients and working on mortgage loans, that the industry itself needed a voice from somebody other than those up in DC, somebody like us, mortgage brokers working out in California, for example. And so I would say the most passionate thing that I stand out is the work that I did to create stability in a market that we're all participating in today. I assure you that if myself and others like me were not there, our industry would look nothing like it does right now. It is amazing how much change happened since the mortgage meltdown. And in fact, most of us don't even know about it or can't eloquently speak on this change. And it's present anyway. So I would say that that's probably the most passionate part of how I found myself showing up in a way that affects more than just my local market.
Yeah, absolutely. Just speaking with you for the past 13 minutes now, you have an amazing story, and I'm really happy that you came on the show to share some knowledge. When did you start your company, Scott Griffin Financial?
I started in 2003. It was so funny, Rocco. You know what I've learned? Do you know what I've learned about industry that I love so much? Everything's possible. And yes, you can. Look at, I'm literally getting goose pimples, and I'll tell you why. So I shared with you, my invitation to industry was in an elevator ride. Her name is Peaches. And a neat lady, her so much spirit, and she took care of my refinance. And in that work, she invited a position in her company. She said she would teach me everything. And then years later, I asked her, what would it be like to move into the city from the valley? And we found ourselves wanting different things in life. And she told me this, Rocco. She said, Scott, it would be very hard to penetrate the city of Los Angeles proper, that there are an abundance of folks that have been working that market for a long time. And we work the valley. So coming to penetrate that market, that's something we could do. Or we could go up north to the Ventura County, she suggested, where there was less competition. And those were her eyes of her business model. That worked great for what her want looked like. I was in my 30s. Rocco, I wanted to be in the city on Sunset Boulevard. I wanted to be where the fun was. And well, I found out, Rocco, that if you work from want, the how will get discovered. I had no idea that I would meet a business manager that would help me to run my business, that would help me to incorporate. I never knew that an architect on one of the fanciest buildings on Sunset Boulevard would have a sublet space for me to adopt. I never knew that the woman that I showed my open house to on a home I was selling, my personal home, I wasn't selling it. The realtor was hosting one. It was closing. Well, she just happened to work at Warner Brothers. I opened up my office. Rocco, it was about a month later. I didn't yet have my broker's license. This was in 2003, and California was going through a big budget impact. And so our Department of Real Estate was wickedly behind. And I thought, well, what do I do? How can I open up my new business leaving Peachtree? And I ended up going to Australia. I thought, that's how I'll take care of it. I won't tell people I can't help them because I'll be out of the country. And instead, Rocco, our lending partners made sure I could operate immediately by providing them the proof that I passed all of the exams and I made it through the DRE and was just waiting on a license. And that was in 2003. Rocco, 6 months later, I had to leave the sublet building and I had to go up 3 floors on the 9,000 building of Sunset to get my own office. Who knew that it would explode that well? And if I would have lived the story that somebody so professional that I looked up to told me that you couldn't because it was too hard, I wouldn't have done it. But Rocco, I've learned that life, that everything's possible. And it doesn't matter when we begin. Allow passion to show up, participate, and I say believe. Self-belief is a powerful tool I've discovered, Rocco. You and I know that there's no proof that any other consumer wants to work with us tomorrow, and that this is an industry that pays us on those that consumers that choose to. If I don't close a mortgage to support home ownership, I don't earn a dollar. So I've got to be spectacular every day. So it invites me to show up differently because I believe I can. And well, that self-belief led me to become the president, sent me off to Congress, had me doing things I never dreamed possible, Rocco. And I don't know where we get stuck in life. Even though 2007 happened, 2008, 9, and 10, again, I've learned that painful moments are opportunities to interrupt normal, to invite something else to take its place. And I don't think there's ever anything right or wrong in life, Rocco. It's just experiences. So it's impossible to fail. If something didn't work, well, then just change your approach. Do it again. But it didn't mean it failed. We captured an experience and we learned don't do it that way again if we want something next time. So I think those beliefs, Rocco, allow us to show up passionately in the world of mortgage lending, at least myself.
So what books do you read? Who do you follow? Where does this passion come from?
You know, I'm starting now, Rocco, to give myself time to read. Rocco, I have a feeling that for myself, Rocco, I grew up in foster care and boys' homes. I grew up in a unique way that allowed a lot of challenges to show up early in my life. I learned different versions of me back then that were full of anger. I would complain all the time. I was a different version of self, not really finding where I could fit. And I was moving all the time. So in my mind, I would suggest I had an abundance of contrast, of things that failed. And it was in my 20s, I think, Rocco, that all of the tools that I was given from early ages of therapy kind of unlocked themselves in my 30s. I got really depressed in my 20s, like super depressed, because there was something that happened that triggered that, and it was my own fault. Rocco, I needed that pain. That's that moment for me that interrupted how I was in my 20s. And I started doing a different exercise. Rocco, for example, if you and I are trying to redesign our physical body, we go to the gym and we lift weights. There's a blueprint and a design with repetition and even coaches we can hire to help us get there sooner than later. But how do we do that in life? So here's how I did it, Rocco. I literally stopped in my day. It was in my 30s. I was coming into the mortgage business. I was having a depressed time. The storm was perfect. And I started doing a different version of workout. And my workout was appreciation. And I would literally stop in the day, Rocco, and I would appreciate something in the moment. I did it at a minimum of 12 times a day. And it was not easy at first, just like breaking any new habit or creating a new habit. Of course, it's not easy. You didn't do it before. So I had to make it a real exercise. And I started going with just like breathing, like I'm free to breathe. And the easy stuff were the easiest pieces to find. And then I really dug deep in the work. And then I started appreciating, Rocco, the roads, tar. Who invented tar? How many times did it take them to create the tar? And then who actually laid out this tar? And then who designed the roads that connect states together? And I would go as deep as I could. And the deeper I became, the more available the appreciation showed up. And the more I did it, Rocco, the more I became available to find it. But I wasn't trained that way. In fact, Rocco, I think most of us growing up were brought up in a school training method that highlighted with a big red pen the 4 questions we got wrong, not the 26 we got right. And we were often taught where to find things that were failing. But because I was raised the way I was, all of my freedom and everything was removed up front. And the way I got things was by points, by privileges. It was a whole different upbringing. And I was surrounded, Rocco. I wasn't alone. I was like 8 years old and all the way up. I was around other youth like myself. And we would be in circle group and I would hear about their obstacles and we would work them out together. And so I have a different level of understanding because of the troubled moments that my earlier periods provided. Somehow I was fortunate, Rocco, and I didn't get stuck in an area that's easy to get stuck in. It was those exercises, Rocco, that changed my world. When I was able to find a new version of me, it was literally at the same time I was coming into the mortgage brokering industry. It was just gorgeous in its own design. And here I am now, well, 52 years old, and I find a whole level of available appreciation. What I took off here for, in fact, Rocco, was this wrist brace. I was run over by an SUV, Rocco, in the crosswalk in February, and I've got stitches, scars on my forehead now. My wrist is all chewed up, and there's blah blahs. Rocco, my spirit's as bright as it can be. I doubt it would be if I didn't focus on the exercises that have empowered the levels of appreciation. They're not organically found. I don't believe we were trained to locate them. It literally took the exercise that was repetitive, consistent, and years in the making that allowed this version of me to show up. And I have a feeling it was not a book in particular, Rocco, as much as it was intentional purpose of reshaping understandings, self-understandings. I think life is just about interpretation. And instead I used to complain, Rocco. I live in LA and I was like, oh, this traffic. Oh, I hate this traffic. And I started thinking about it. Well, I don't hate the traffic. Rocco, the reason why there's traffic is because people want to live here too. Well, I don't want to be alone. I love being around others and the energies of that. The lack of traffic would mean that there's lack of people. So I don't really hate it. So those were the rephrasings. And then I noticed that words mattered, Rocco, like never and always, removing opportunities of choice. I've discovered life often has choice. So I learned that words were things, thoughts are things. I spend about 3 hours in the morning when I wake up, and I go for walks, Rocco, almost daily, to
Mhm.
reshape the thoughts, the inner stories. And then I just move them forward in the day. And it allows me to show up this way in an industry I never thought I'd be a part of.
Did you read the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle?
I've heard of the book and I've not read it yet.
Okay, because just the way you're speaking makes it seems like you read it. Just because he really talks about living the present, the power of now, the ego, and the words and just everything. Just what you're describing made me think that you had read it.
I think I was just born into the understandings of the before. One of the odd things about being in those different institutions, Rocco, is that every day, it was almost every day for therapy. And there was like constant therapy. And I grew up in the 70s as a kid. And I think back then, therapy wasn't popular. And so I remember youthful shows like Leave It to Beaver and other things on TV that led you to believe that we're all just in a perfect world. And you didn't talk about things. Rocco, I spoke, and if you didn't, they kind of made you, but
Mhm.
they didn't leave you hanging alone. So I was really supported, Rocco. So I believe in everything I said. And what I've discovered, Rocco, is that it just starts with the belief. And I often just visualize myself doing it, having it, being it. I work from want. I don't get stuck in how. If I did, I doubt I'd be here with you right now if I allowed how to be my guide. And I think
Hmm.
most of us start from how. How will I afford it? How long will it take? How will I like it? How? I don't. I like to focus on want, and I love to keep want activated. I've discovered that while want's activated, passion will show up, desire will show up. And I find it important to keep those moments active. And I'll tell you, this environment we're all a part of sure invites a lot of ways to do it.
Absolutely, totally agree with everything you said. Um, and just a question. So, if you were to be as a guide to others just starting out in the industry, what
Yeah.
advice or what tips would you give a loan officer that's just starting out?
Here's what I would say. I would say believe in yourself, that you're in a market right now that you're going to be able to affect many people in many areas. And what you're going to love about it is that money behaves the same in all zip codes. So you'll get to take this talent anywhere you want to bring it, here in our nation at least. And my biggest suggestion is get a coach. You don't have to wait so long. What I've discovered is that with a coach in your life, they'll help invite thoughts that you're probably not self creating. And what you'll discover is that they'll help you get down a path much faster than you'll be able to on your very own. So if you're
Mhm.
newer in the industry, my suggestion is don't do it alone. Find a coach, find a mentor. My coach, in fact, is Carl White of the Freedom Club, the Mortgage Marketing Animals. What a powerfully impactful change that's made in my career. I started with Carl White about 4 years ago, and we were already doing fantastic. But through coaching, and I'm a veteran of industry, you know what I've learned? We're always available to learn something new. Tomorrow's probably different than yesterday, and the student mind will invite you to become somebody different than before. So, Carl, I met, and well, I was amazed. I was representing a loan product that I love called the All in One from CMG Bank. And I went up to Carl after he presented at the association meeting, and I said, Carl, I'm thinking about focusing and working with financial advisors. I know a lot of other loan folks are trying to get with realtors, but I think I should work with them because I've got this super cool product and it'll help their clients. And he goes to me, he goes, Scott, how many hours in a day or in a week do you believe financial advisors are thinking about mortgage loan instruments for their clients?
Hmm.
I sat with that question, and then he went on. He goes, Scott, how many hours in a day do you believe, for example, a real estate agent might be thinking about mortgage lending instruments for their clients. And I was like, oh, well, when you put it that way, I think they're going to be much more involved with what I have to do. And it was that epiphany that I needed to discover that self-thought is beautiful, but getting somebody else's outside look may move you down a path faster. It did. And last year was an incredible year for myself, for our company. It was a very good year. It was a record year. So I my suggestion is a coach. Get a coach. Don't do it alone, and believe. Just believe. The how will show itself.
Definitely. I totally agree with that. Get a coach. It just allows, you to shave years off of what it would take you to think of it or do. So what would it take 10 years for you to figure out on your own? It could take just 2 years if you had a coach that gave you a plan. And like you said, just getting someone else's perspective and getting that wide angle view definitely allows you to do what you wouldn't be able to on your own. So totally agree
Probably
with
help you step into the spirit of uncomfortable, because
Yeah.
I think organically we don't get into uncomfortable. And I've
Mhm.
learned that uncomfortable is where the magic shows up. So I think that the coach, and in the spirit of uncomfortable, do you know what else I discovered, Rocco?
What?
Pay the money. You know,
Invest. Yeah.
I've learned if it's free, you're probably not going to do it, and it
Yeah.
won't be as impactful. Rocco, my coaching cost me almost $2,000 a month. Talk about putting dollars to the story. What I discovered is it allows me to show up. If it was only a couple of dollars, maybe. But
Mhm.
those dollars make me show up differently. I know coaches come in all different flavors, all different price points. I just suggest the uncomfortable is where the real magic shows up fast.
Yep.
Doing things you didn't do before. And when you pay a lot of money to do it, you're probably going to show up. And if it was for
Mhm.
free, you're going to find every reason not to. But you throw out $1,900. I bet you're showing up on that phone call, and I
Mhm.
bet you're going to take the action.
Yep. My coaching's $3,000, and I've had many coaches, and it's just like you said, comfort zone. They tell you what to do, and you're gonna do it, no matter if it's in your comfort zone, if it's out of your comfort zone. When he tells me to do something, I just do it. There's no questions because it's a proven process.
Don't you agree? And Rocco, how many people are creating online things like you're doing? There's some. I think it's terrific that you're doing it. I recently spent some time on figuring out podcasting myself, and I believe it's such a great method to get your story out, to meet others, to engage, to empower, to inspire, and to allow technology to take you out there further. And I think it's terrific what you're doing. I had so much fun, Rocco. And the fun that I had was exploring your page. And do you know what I discovered?
Wow.
Rocco, your passion is deep. You've got a lot of folks. I think you're on episode 28 or 30 or something great. And that's all proof of doing things consistently and being available to show it to others. I think it's awesome. I think
Thank you
you're
so much.
awesome for what you're doing. And do you know what else? So here I am in the back of my mind as I'm watching what you're doing. Rocco, I don't know how old you are, but I have a feeling you're younger than 50. And I love that. Why I say any of that and age relate this is I think that is wickedly important for others to come into an industry that during the collapse looked so scary. And I'm so grateful you're here. I'm so grateful that other peers of your world are part of our industry. Our industry is so much better because of it. I don't think people are comfortable with change traditionally. And with technology being so bold, Rocco, if you just leave us 50 and 60-year-old veterans in the show, guess how much change is coming? Probably not enough. But you bring in some beautiful fresh blood and you get new stories to visit with. And I'm so grateful you're here with new stories of inspiration and empowering many through technology platforms like the one we're on right now. So thank you very much, Rocco, for showing up
Well,
in our industry and creating a space for yourself.
well, thank you so much for those kind words, Scott. And Last question here, so we don't take up too much of your time. In recent years, technology has made its way into the industry since you'd started. How would you say technology has affected you and your business?
Dramatically.
Mhm.
You know what I love about it, Rocco? So in the olden days, 2007, you don't have to go that far back to find the olden days. So Cassandra's been on with me since '02. She started. And I would never forget, she'd be in front of that copy machine, Rocco, hitting the Xerox, making triplicates of everything. And then later
Mhm.
she'd take all of these copies to her desk, punch holes in it, and make 3 folders of the same thing and transbox it off to the lender's office. Um, I used to hire a person that was responsible, Rocco, for packaging our disclosures, snail mailing those to the client, waiting for the receipt to come back, and talk about the old ways of the befores, when the rate sheets came through the fax machine. So here we are. Well, I can't say that anybody can just do it. I used to say, oh, a monkey can do it in 2020, but it's not true. Somebody's got to put the grape on the keyboard so the monkey will grab it. They took a lot of the complicated pieces out, Rocco, and they invited algorithms. And what I love about lending is that it's all about rules. It's really easy to write an algorithm to a rule. And so when I think about that, I'm really inspired about technology.
Mhm.
When we send off a file now to a lender, to an investor, we're literally just a couple of clicks. And when we first entered technology, we would still have to organize it, like Cassandra used to do in her 3 folders. But Rocco, not now. Rocco, you just upload the dang thing, and the wonderful technology understands what each piece of paper is, because they're
Mhm.
probably the same thing we're all doing. And so I love our industry having black and white rules that invite algorithm writing to allow an elegance to show up, speed to show up. Part of how we're successful in Los Angeles is we consistently close purchase money loans in 12 days for our home buyers in a
Wow.
very competitive environment. There is no way we could do that, Rocco, if it wasn't for the technology that we employ after our very first phone call. When we send out our loan application, Rocco, in the past, in my loan intake, I would spend about 40 minutes or more. And in the conversation, I was basically taking in the 1003. Through
Yep.
conversation, I would fill in my blanks, I would wait for the documents, and I'd fill them in again, and I would just do it. Now, I just focus on what your want looks like. When we're done understanding that, I'm going to email you our underwriting portal. And what I love is that they're going to be done in about 8 minutes because technology makes it that fluid. We'll
Mhm.
get it back instantly. We enter underwriting. We used to have underwriters. I mean, they still call them underwriters, but it's really DU and LP and algorithms underwriting the mortgage. Day one certainty is in place, and it ensures that lenders are protected against reps and warrants. And who doesn't want protection? So as we move forward every day tomorrow, there's new levels of technology empowering us to do things differently. And you could tell I'm from Rhode Island because it's hard to say the R words. um, but I love it, Rocco, and I embrace it
Yep.
very much. But I know not everybody enjoys change. But I've discovered that if you embrace it, you'll discover that it will support you differently, giving you more opportunities to go out there and speak and empower others instead of waiting in the office to punch holes in the folder.
Mhm. Yep, definitely. Like you said, it took you 40 minutes to take an application. Now you just send them your link. It definitely, uh, it definitely allows tasks to be, automated, streamlined, and just quicker. Like you said, speed. So if you embrace technology and you adapt with it, then it'll work for you rather than against you.
It's so true. And Rocco, I used to think that cash was king in real estate. And then I thought about why. And I figured it out. So cash, when it writes an offer to purchase, it doesn't include a loan contingency. Cash doesn't need permission. The appraisal's for the lender, not the buyer. So they don't need that. But cash doesn't buy blindly. It still inspects the property. But cash wins because it closes quickly. Most of us with a mortgage instrument needs about 30 days or more. It's pretty traditional still. So that's where I discovered more strategy being available. What if we did all the underwriting up front? Pre-underwrite the thing. And then when you're ordering an appraisal, don't order it standard. Order it on a rush. Get it back quickly so that you can issue the CD rapidly. And we're often getting our CDs out, and you may not even had your physical inspection yet. And we've discovered it's the technology that allows us to look so amazing out there in the industry. And there's so many of us in industry out there. So the more amazing we can look, I think the more spectacular we are to them. And them are our consumer or our realtor partners that we're supporting. And so I say embrace the technology. It'll empower you to do super cool things and free up your time. We love Be in Touch. Be in Touch is our CRM platform. I love it because it integrates with the smartphone so perfectly. Every client that calls, all of their information comes up, conversations. It's like the coolest thing ever. We have team members, Rocco, Eliza, she's spectacular on my team. She's in Ohio. It doesn't matter. The Encompass works just fine. The Dropbox just fine. I love it, Rocco. Even the fact that you and I can be on this camera and you're in Chicago and I'm up here in California. Well, I'm down here in California. You're up there having a great time too, I bet. What a great city.
Yep. Thank you. Well, Scott, I really want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was truly I had an amazing time speaking with you, and I really appreciate your time.
I had a feeling this was going to be a great time after seeing your work, Rocco. Thanks for inviting me. It was wonderful.
Absolutely. And thank you to all the viewers for tuning in and watching this episode, and we'll see you again next time.